Alara Voss wiped grease from her forehead, leaving another dark streak across her already smudged face. The repair bay hummed with the soft sound of failing lights and the occasional spark from her workbench. Outside, Nova Station's perpetual acid rain pattered against the reinforced windows, a constant reminder of the environmental collapse that had driven humanity into these cramped orbital habitats decades ago. Diagnostic complete, announced the monotone voice of her workshop AI, thruster capacitor at 7% efficiency, recommended action replacement. Tell me something I don't know, Vale, Alara muttered, tossing her polymer wrench into the toolbox. The small cargo hauler she'd been repairing for the past 3 days was proving more stubborn than expected. Any chance we have a compatible part in storage? Negative. Last compatible unit was installed in Freight Transport 227 approximately 42 days ago. Alara sighed and leaned back on her stool, stretching her aching shoulders. At 36, she felt twice that age most days. 15 years of hunching over engines and crawling through maintenance ducts had left her with permanent knots in her back and a collection of scars that mapped her career like constellations. The workshop door chimed, an unexpected sound at this late hour. Alara frowned. The neon sign outside clearly displayed closed in 3 system languages. Vale Security Feed. The AI projected a holographic display showing the entrance. Alara's breath caught. A small figure huddled against the door, clearly not human. The slender limbs and faintly luminescent skin marked the child as Meridian, one of the biomechanical species from the Epsilon system. What the hell? Alara whispered. Meridians rarely ventured to this part of the station, especially not alone. Not since the Unity Accords had dissolved into bitter species segregation 5 years ago. Should I engage security protocols? Vale asked. Alara hesitated. The station's security forces weren't known for their gentle handling of alien incidents. No, open the doors. The entrance slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Cold, damp air rushed in, carrying the acrid smell of the station's lower levels. The child startled, large iridescent eyes blinking rapidly, a sign of distress among Meridians. Please, the child's voice sounded strained, the universal translator in Alara's ear catching the subtle harmonic undertones of Meridian speech patterns. Help my mother, no one else will. Kid, I fix machines, not people, Alara said, but found herself stepping closer anyway. There's a medical sector in. They refused, the child interrupted, clutching something to its chest, a small biotech communicator. They said her model is discontinued, said, recycling would be more efficient. The last words tumbled out in a broken sob that needed no translation. Against her better judgment, Alara knelt to the child's level. What's your name? Kex, the child replied. My mother is Nima. She started malfunctioning 3 cycles ago. Her thermal regulators are failing and her neural pathways are misfiring. The clinical description, delivered in such a young voice, struck Alara as profoundly wrong. Children shouldn't know such technical failures, especially not when describing their own parents. Show me, she heard herself say before she could reconsider. Relief washed over Kex's luminescent features. The child reached for Alara's hand, the right one, her flesh and blood hand, not the mechanical left she'd received after the accident. She's hidden not far, I couldn't move her alone. As Alara followed the child out into the rain-slicked corridor, she silently cursed her own softness. The station had strict laws about interfering with alien medical issues. If caught, she'd lose her license at minimum. At worst, well, the detention centers in the station's core were always looking for new inhabitants. Vale, she called back to the AI, secure the workshop. I'll be back when I'm back. The door sealed behind them as they slipped into the shadows of Nova Station's forgotten corridors, the mechanic and the alien child moving like ghosts through the artificial night. The maintenance shaft was barely wide enough for Alara to squeeze through, her toolkit banging awkwardly against the rusted walls. Kex moved ahead with the fluid grace typical of Meridians, the child's bioluminescent skin providing just enough light to navigate the cramped passage. Down here, Kex whispered, pausing at a junction where several corridors intersected. I found an abandoned recycling bay. No one goes there anymore. The heavy door creaked as Kex pushed it open, revealing a cavernous space filled with discarded machine parts and forgotten cargo containers. In the center lay a makeshift bed constructed from shipping foam and scraps of thermal blankets. On it lay Kex's mother. Alara's breath caught. Despite working with machines her entire life, she'd never seen a Meridian up close. Nima's skin shimmered with faint blue circuitry patterns beneath a translucent epidermis. Where human skin would show veins, hers displayed intricate networks of microscopic filaments that pulsed with weakening light. How long has she been like this? Alara asked, kneeling beside the unconscious figure. 3 station cycles, Kex replied, tiny fingers stroking his mother's trembling hand. It started with memory lapses, then her temperature regulation failed. Alara pulled a diagnostic scanner from her kit, hesitating before placing it against Nima's temple. The device was calibrated for machines, not biomechanical life forms. But as the readings flickered across the screen, she realized the fundamental principles weren't so different. Her neural network is overheating, Alara murmured, and there's some kind of cascade failure in her thermal regulation system. Can you fix her? Kex's voice sounded impossibly small. Alara bit her lip. I don't know, kid. This is way beyond thruster repairs and power converters. I'd need specialized parts equipment I don't have. Please, Kex's voice cracked. We have no one else. Before Alara could respond, Nima's body suddenly arched, her skin flaring with bright pulses of light as violent tremors overtook her. Beneath her closed eyelids, her eyes darted frantically back and forth. She's seizing. Alara dropped her scanner and pressed her hands against Nima's shoulders. Help me hold her steady. For 30 terrifying seconds, they struggled to keep Nima from injuring herself. When the seizure finally subsided, Alara noticed black fluid leaking from the woman's ears. This is worse than I thought, she muttered. We need to get her somewhere I can work properly, and I need parts, specialized cooling units and neural stabilizers. The medical facilities won't help us, Kex said. No, but I know someone who might. Alara tapped her communicator. Veil secure channel to contact Rusty Nail. A moment passed before a gruff voice answered. This better be important, Voss. It's the middle of my sleep cycle. Talon, I need your help. I've got a meridian biomech in critical condition. Neural cascade failure, thermal regulation collapse. A low whistle came through the speaker. You certainly don't start small, do you? Helping aliens, that's worth at least 3 violations of the Segregation Act. Are you in or not? Alara demanded. A pause. Meet me at the old hydroponics lab in 30 minutes. And Voss, come alone. Can't, I've got 2 passengers. Another pause, longer this time. Fine, back entrance, bring credits. The connection cut. Alara turned to find Kex staring at her with those unnervingly large eyes. Who was that? Someone who loves rare technology even more than he hates breaking the law, Alara explained, already gathering Nima into her arms. The Meridian woman was surprisingly light. Come on, we've got a long way to go and your mother doesn't have much time. The abandoned hydroponics lab loomed before them, its once transparent dome now clouded with years of industrial residue. Alara had wrapped Nima in thermal blankets and used a hover cart to transport her through the station's less traveled corridors. A figure stepped from the shadows as they approached, tall and lean, with augmented eyes that glowed faintly amber in the dim light. Talon Rivera had once been Nova Station's most promising biotech engineer, until a scandal involving illegal neural enhancements had cost him his license and reputation. You look terrible, he said by way of greeting, eyes focused on the bundle on the hover cart. Nice to see you too, Alara replied dryly. Talon's attention shifted to Kex. A Meridian child, interesting, he knelt to Kex's level. Your kind fascinate me, living technology, evolving circuits, organic processors, beautiful design. My mother is dying, Kex said simply. Something in Talon's expression softened. Let's see what we can do about that. Inside the lab, remnants of its original purpose remained, empty hydroponic tubes and nutrient tanks now repurposed into a makeshift workshop. Sophisticated equipment, much of it clearly obtained through less-than-legal channels, lined the walls. Talon helped transfer Nima onto an examination table, immediately connecting diagnostic sensors to her temples and wrists. Data streams filled multiple holographic displays. Mnemonic neurodegeneration, he said after studying the readings. It's attacking her core systems. Can you fix it? Alara asked. Talon ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Maybe. I'll need specialized components, a chromium-based neural stabilizer, medical-grade cooling units, and thermal transfer filaments. Where do we get those? The black market in Sector 16, but they'll cost more than either of us can afford. Alara hesitated before reaching into her pocket and pulling out a small metal container. Inside lay a pristine quantum processing chip, rare and extraordinarily valuable. I was saving this, she said quietly, for a ship of my own someday. Talon stared at the chip, then at Alara. This would buy you passage off this decaying station, why would you? Just take it, she interrupted, not meeting his eyes, and tell me what else we need. As Talon prepared a temporary stabilizing solution for Nima, Alara felt Kex's small hand slip into hers. "Thank you," the child whispered. Alara squeezed the tiny fingers gently. "Don't thank me yet, kid. We've still got a long way to go." Across the room, Talon worked with unexpected gentleness, his movements precise and careful. Occasionally, his eyes would lift to meet Alara's, a question in them she wasn't ready to answer. Why risk everything for strangers? For aliens, she wasn't sure she knew herself. All she knew was that when Kex had looked at her with those frightened eyes, something long dormant had stirred within her, a need to protect, to fix what was broken. After all, wasn't that what she'd always done? Dawn never truly came to the lower levels of Nova Station. The artificial day cycle manifested only as a subtle brightening of the ambient lighting, a poor substitute for the sun that Alara barely remembered from her childhood on Earth. She woke with a start, disoriented until she recognized the abandoned hydroponics lab. She'd fallen asleep in a chair beside Nima's bed, her hand still resting on her toolkit. Across the room, Kex slept curled against his mother's side, small chest rising and falling in rhythm with Nima's more stabilized breathing. The temporary cooling system Talon had rigged hummed softly, circulating chilled fluids through tubes connected to Nima's neural ports. It wouldn't last long, but it had bought them time. "You talk in your sleep." Alara turned to find Talon watching her from his workbench, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept at all. "What did I say?" she asked, suddenly uneasy. "Name's Myra Jace." His expression remained neutral, but his eyes held something like recognition. "You lost someone to alien tech, didn't you?" Alara looked away. "That's not your business." It is if it explains why a human mechanic is risking everything for a Meridian family. He pushed away from the bench and approached, offering a steaming cup of synthetic coffee. "The same reason I lost my license, perhaps." Alara accepted the cup, the warmth seeping into her cold fingers. "My sister Myra married a terraforming engineer. Jace was their son, my nephew. They were stationed on Callisto when the Unity Accords collapsed." Talon remained silent, waiting. The colonial governor decided aliens were a security risk, ordered all their tech confiscated, including medical equipment. "My sister's husband was Centaurian, their son was half-human," she swallowed hard. "The militia couldn't tell the difference between alien tech and alien people, or maybe they didn't care to try." "I'm sorry," Talon said softly. "I couldn't save them, but maybe," she glanced at Kex and Nima, "maybe I can save them." Talon's hand brushed against hers as he reached for the empty cup. The brief contact sent an unexpected current through her, something she hadn't felt in years. "I made the exchange," he said, changing the subject. "Your chip bought us what we need. My contact will deliver the parts tonight." "That's good." Alara found herself distracted by the closeness, by the scent of machine oil and something uniquely him. "Talon," she began, unsure what she wanted to say. A small sound interrupted them, Kex stirring, rubbing luminescent eyes. "Is my mother better?" the child asked immediately. "She's stable," Talon answered, pulling away from Alara, "and we've got parts coming to help her fully recover." Kex's face brightened, literally, the bioluminescent patterns beneath the skin glowing stronger. "Can I help prepare? I know my mother's systems." "Absolutely," Talon said with unexpected gentleness. "Every good engineer needs an assistant." Throughout the day, they worked together, Talon showing Kex basic engineering principles while Alara monitored Nima's condition. When the Meridian woman briefly regained consciousness, her glowing eyes immediately sought her child. "Kex," she whispered, voice musical despite its weakness. "Mother," the child rushed to her side. "You're awake, these humans are helping us, they're fixing you." Nima's gaze shifted to Alara, then Talon. "Why?" A simple question with a complicated answer. Alara stepped forward. "Because it's the right thing to do." Nima's hand reached out, trembling. When Alara took it, the sensation was strange, warm but with the subtle vibration of machinery beneath living tissue. "Thank you," Nima whispered before slipping back into unconsciousness. Evening brought a discreet delivery, a small package containing the specialized components they needed. As Talon laid them out on the workbench, his expression grew serious. "The operation won't be simple. We'll need to replace her damaged neural pathways and integrate the new cooling system with her organic components. One mistake could be fatal." "Can you do it?" Alara asked. "With your help, yes." They began preparations, working in tandem as if they'd done so for years. Alara found herself observing Talon's hands, scarred but precise, capable of both brute force and delicate manipulation. When their fingers brushed during the transfer of tools, neither pulled away quite as quickly as before. As night settled fully over the station, they shared a simple meal with Kex, who demonstrated remarkable resilience despite the circumstances. The child told stories of home, a small meridian colony on a terraformed moon where biomechanical beings and nature coexisted in harmony. "Will you take us there when Mother is well?" Kex asked innocently. Before either adult could answer, the lab's security system chimed a warning. "Someone's coming," Talon said, instantly alert. Multiple signatures. Alara's heart raced. Station security. Worse, corporate enforcers. They must have traced the black market components. On the security feed, 6 figures in the unmistakable armor of Helix Corporation's private security force approached the lab's entrance. Their weapons were drawn. "They'll kill Nima," Alara whispered, "and take Kex for research." Talon's expression hardened. "Not if I can help it." He moved to a hidden panel, revealing an emergency exit. "Take them through here. It leads to the maintenance tunnels beneath the agricultural sector." "What about you?" Their eyes locked. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, recognition of a connection neither had expected to find. Without warning, Talon pulled her close, his lips finding hers in a desperate, hungry kiss. Alara responded instantly, her body arching against his, years of loneliness and grief momentarily forgotten in the heat of connection. When they separated, both breathless, Talon pressed a data chip into her palm. "Coordinates to my backup lab in Sector 23, go there. I'll create a diversion and join you when I can." "Talon." No time to argue, Voss. His smile was crooked. "Besides, I've always wanted to be the hero." Kex had already begun preparing Nima for transport. Alara hesitated only a moment before helping load the unconscious woman onto the hover cart. As they disappeared into the escape tunnel, the last thing Alara saw was Talon adjusting his jacket, a look of determined calm settling over his features as he moved to meet the approaching enforcers. 3 days in Talon's backup lab and still no sign of him. Alara paced the small space, occasionally checking the surveillance feeds that monitored the lab's perimeter. The facility was well hidden within an abandoned water reclamation plant, shielded from scans by layers of radiation-absorbing materials, likely left over from some forgotten industrial accident. "Any change?" Kex asked, appearing at her side with uncanny silence. "Nothing yet," Alara replied, trying to keep the worry from her voice. "But that's good news. If they'd captured him, they'd be looking for us too." On the medical bed, Nima rested in a semi-stable condition. The temporary cooling system continued to prevent her neural pathways from overheating, but without the final operation, she would never fully recover. "Can we not complete the procedure ourselves?" Kex asked, displaying the pragmatism that seemed inherent to Meridians. Alara shook her head. "Talon has the surgical expertise, I'm just a mechanic." "But you understand systems," Kex insisted. "My mother's systems are just like your machines, only living." The child's simple observation struck Alara deeply. Perhaps the difference between mechanics and medicine wasn't as vast as she'd believed. She examined the components they'd acquired, the neural stabilizer, cooling units, and filaments, along with Talon's detailed notes on the procedure, if she approached it like a complex engine repair. "Let me study these tonight," she told Kex. "Maybe there's a way." Later, as artificial night settled over the station, Alara lost herself in Talon's notes. His handwriting was unexpectedly elegant, his diagrams precise and detailed. Between the lines of technical instructions, she glimpsed the man himself, brilliant, meticulous, passionate about his work. She realized with a start how much she missed him. In just a few days, he had broken through defenses she'd spent years building. Now he was gone, possibly captured or worse, because he'd helped her save a family that wasn't even human. A soft alert from the perimeter sensors jolted her from her thoughts. Someone was approaching, a single figure moving cautiously toward the hidden entrance. Alara grabbed her plasma cutter, not designed as a weapon but capable of functioning as one in emergency, and positioned herself between the door and her charges. The lock cycled, the door slid open, and a familiar silhouette appeared. Talon, Alara lowered the tools, relief flooding through her. He looked exhausted, his clothes torn and dirty, a bruise darkening one cheekbone, but he was smiling. "Miss me?" he asked, his voice rough with fatigue. Alara didn't think. She crossed the space between them in 3 quick strides and pulled him into a fierce embrace. His arms wrapped around her instantly, holding her as if afraid she might disappear. "I thought they'd caught you," she whispered against his neck. "They tried," his hands moved to frame her face, "but I'm surprisingly difficult to catch." This time when they kissed, there was no desperation, only a slow-building heat that made Alara's knees weak. His hands tangled in her hair as hers slipped beneath his jacket, finding warm skin and the steady beat of his heart. A discreet sound, Kex clearing their throat, brought them reluctantly apart. "I am pleased you have returned," the child said, eyes averted in what might have been the meridian equivalent of embarrassment. "Mother has been asking for you." Talon grinned. "Well, we can't keep a lady waiting, can we?" After examining Nima and reviewing the monitoring data, Talon confirmed what they had feared. The temporary measures were beginning to fail. They needed to perform the complete neural replacement immediately. "We'll need one more component," he said grimly. "A biomechanical interface regulator. Without it, her organic systems won't synchronize with the new neural pathways." "Where do we get one?" Alara asked, already dreading the answer. "There's only one place on this station, the Medical Research Facility in Sector 1. They're developing similar technology for their biomechanical soldiers." "That's a high-security military zone," Alara protested. "We'd never get in." A slow smile spread across Talon's face. "Actually, I still have clearance. They revoked my license, not my access codes, oversight on their part." "It's too dangerous," Alara argued, "if they catch you." "They won't," he took her hands in his. "But I can't do it alone. I need someone who can bypass security systems while I access the medical storage." Their eyes locked in silent communication, then Alara nodded. "When do we leave?" "First light cycle, less personnel on duty." They spent the remaining hours preparing. Talon outlined the facility's layout, identifying security checkpoints and potential escape routes. Meanwhile, Alara modified her tools for the more delicate work of bypassing encrypted locks. As they worked, their bodies moved in unconscious synchronicity, hands brushing, shoulders touching. Each contact sent sparks of awareness through Alara's body, a distraction she couldn't afford but couldn't resist either. When preparations were complete, and Kex had finally fallen asleep beside Nima, they found themselves alone in the small side room Talon used as living quarters. "We should rest," he said, though his eyes suggested sleep was the last thing on his mind. "We should," Alara agreed, stepping closer. His hand rose to trace the line of her jaw, "if tomorrow goes wrong." "It won't," she interrupted, pressing her fingers against his lips. He caught her hand, turning it to place a kiss on her palm. "Alara Voss, you are the most stubborn, brilliant woman I've ever met." "And you," she replied, her voice husky with desire, "are the only person who's ever made me forget to be afraid." What followed was inevitable: clothes discarded, bodies entwined on the narrow bed, whispered words and stifled sounds of pleasure. In the artificial darkness of the station night, they found in each other a connection neither had expected, momentarily forgetting the dangers that awaited them. The medical research facility gleamed with sterility, all white surfaces and harsh lighting. Alara and Talon moved through the corridors with practiced confidence, their borrowed lab coats and forged identification badges apparently sufficient to avoid immediate suspicion. "The storage unit should be through that door," Talon murmured, nodding toward a sealed entrance at the end of the hallway. "Your turn." Alara knelt beside the access panel, pulling a modified scanner from her pocket. The device quickly identified the security protocols and began working to override them. "How long?" Talon asked, keeping watch. 2 minutes, maybe 3. The seconds crawled by as the scanner worked. Finally, a soft beep signaled success and the door slid open. Inside, rows of specialized storage units held various biomechanical components, each carefully cataloged and secured. There, Talon pointed to a small case bearing the designation Neural Interface Regulator Prototype 7C. "That's what we need." As he retrieved the component, Alara's attention was drawn to a nearby security monitor. On the screen, she saw armed security personnel moving with purpose toward their location. "Talon," she hissed, "we've been made." He pocketed the regulator and grabbed her hand. "Side exit, now." They raced through the facility, alarms beginning to sound around them. At a junction, Talon suddenly stopped. "What are you doing?" Alara demanded. "They'll have the exits covered." He pulled her close, pressing the regulator into her hand. "Take this, get back to Nima and Kex." "Not without you." His eyes softened. "I'll create a diversion, draw them away." "No," she protested, "we go together or not at all." "Alara," he said firmly, cupping her face in his hands. "Someone needs to save that family, and someone needs to make sure security doesn't follow." He kissed her quickly. "Meet me at Docking Bay 17 in 6 hours. There's a transport leaving for the outer colonies." Before she could argue further, he pressed something else into her hand, an access card. My personal shuttle, it's not much, but it'll get you there. His eyes held hers. If I don't make it. You will, she insisted. With one final look, he turned and sprinted down the opposite corridor, deliberately making noise to attract attention. Within moments, security personnel were in pursuit, just as he'd intended. Alara stood frozen for an instant, torn between following him and completing their mission. Finally, duty won out. Clutching the precious regulator, she slipped away through the service tunnels, her heart heavier than it had ever been. Temperature stabilizing, neural activity returning to normal parameters. Alara watched the monitors with exhausted relief as Nima's vital signs continued to improve. The operation had taken nearly 4 hours, a delicate dance of mechanical precision and improvisation. Without Talon's surgical expertise, Alara had relied on her mechanics' understanding of systems and Kex's intimate knowledge of meridian physiology. Against all odds, it had worked. The neural stabilizer was functioning perfectly, the cooling system integrated seamlessly with Nima's organic components, and the interface regulator, Talon's final gift, had synchronized her mechanical and biological systems. She's going to recover fully, Alara told Kex, who hadn't left his mother's side throughout the procedure. The child's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with joy. You saved her. We all did. Alara checked the time display, 5 hours since she'd left Talon at the medical facility. 1 hour until the rendezvous he'd suggested. If he made it. Kex, I need to go soon, she said gently. But first, we need to get your mother ready for transport. Where are we going? Alara hesitated. Somewhere safe. There's a transport leaving for the outer colonies tonight. They don't ask many questions out there. Together, they prepared Nima for travel, securing her to the hover cart and gathering the few possessions they had. Throughout the process, Alara found herself constantly checking the time, hope and fear battling within her heart. As the appointed hour approached, Alara made a difficult decision. Kex, I need you to take your mother to docking bay 17. Use the service corridors we mapped, they're less monitored. The child's eyes widened. You're not coming with us. I'll meet you there, she promised. There's something I need to do first. After providing Kex with detailed instructions and the access card to Talon's shuttle, Alara made her way to the security center of Nova Station. Years of repair work throughout the station had given her intimate knowledge of its layout, including rarely used access points. Breaking into the security feeds was risky but necessary. She needed to know if Talon had been captured or if he was still free, still coming to meet them. The feeds showed no sign of him among the detained. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by renewed worry. If he wasn't in custody, where was he? With time running out, Alara abandoned her search and hurried toward docking bay 17. The corridors seemed endless, every shadow potentially hiding station security or corporate enforcers. When she finally reached the bay, she spotted Talon's shuttle, small but well-maintained, perfect for their escape. Outside it stood Kex, anxiously scanning the crowd. Where's your mother? Alara asked as she approached. Already aboard, Kex replied, but there's no sign of Talon. Alara checked the time. The transport to the outer colonies would depart in 15 minutes. They needed to board Talon's shuttle now if they were to secure a place in the convoy. We can't wait any longer, she said, though the words felt like betrayal. He would want us to go to get your mother to safety. Kex's luminescent eyes searched hers. You love him, the child observed with startling perception. The simple statement caught Alara off guard. Did she? In the chaos of the past days, she hadn't fully processed the depth of her feelings, but standing there facing the prospect of leaving without him, she knew the truth. Yes, she admitted, I think I do. Then we wait, Kex declared with the unwavering certainty of youth. 5 more minutes. Those 5 minutes stretched like years. Alara watched every entrance, hopping with each passing second to see Talon's familiar figure. 4 minutes 3-2. Alara, Kex's voice pulled her attention to a side entrance, where a shadowy figure limped into view. Talon looked worse than before, blood staining one sleeve, his face pale with exhaustion, but he was alive. Alive and moving toward them with determined steps. Alara ran to him, supporting his weight as he stumbled. You're late, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Traffic was terrible, he managed, wincing as she helped him toward the shuttle. Nima. Recovering, the operation was successful. Relief washed over his features. I knew you could do it. Inside the shuttle, they found Nima awake and alert, her luminescent patterns glowing steadily beneath her skin. When she saw Talon, understanding dawned in her eyes. You risked everything for us, she said softly. Both of you did. Well, Talon replied with a weak smile as Alara helped him into the pilot's seat. Someone very wise once told me it was the right thing to do. As the docking bay doors opened and the transport prepared to depart, Alara took the co-pilot's chair beside Talon. His hand found hers across the console, fingers intertwining. "Where to?" he asked. Alara looked back at their passengers, a mother and child who had become, against all odds, something like family. Then she turned to the man beside her, whose presence in her life had reawakened parts of herself she'd thought long dead. "Anywhere," she said, squeezing his hand, "as long as we're together." The shuttle lifted smoothly from the bay floor, joining the convoy of ships heading for the outer colonies. Through the viewscreen, Nova Station grew smaller behind them, a tangle of lights and metal shrinking into the vast darkness of space. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also possibility, a chance to build something new from broken parts just as they had always done. Inside the small cabin, four disparate lives had become inexplicably intertwined: human and alien, mechanic and engineer, mother and child. Different circuits now functioning as one system. As the stars stretched before them, Alara realized they had created something precious and rare in this cold universe. Not just a second chance, but a family. Imperfect, unexpected, and exactly what each of them needed. The shuttle accelerated into the darkness, carrying its passengers toward a future none of them could have imagined just days before, a future they would face together.